started on what are some of the principles we should really understand if we're going to really learn how to be effective leaders and enhance the skills that we already have. And so, that said, I'm going to ask you to fill out the worksheet here. You can open your book to page 8, have your pencil ready to go. And we'll kind of read that whole paragraph, or that whole page together, and many of you probably have seen this. It is not, by the way, I don't think of everything in this book as being 100% accurate and you have to agree with it or you're a terrible leader. In fact, that's sort of the point of this book, is to ask you the question, what do you think about this? And I got to tell you, I'll be honest with you, I've done this program dozens of times, and I get a new perspective all the time because everybody looks at these things differently. So, as we read this, think about what you think about this. Don't just sit there and think, well, he's just telling us how to think. That is not the case at all. In fact, it's the opposite. I'm asking you what you think. Okay? So we'll just kind of go, so we're on page 8. This little paragraph is called attitude. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude, to me, is more important than facts, more important than past, education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people say or think or do. It's more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. Attitude will make or break a team, or a church, or a family. What is truly remarkable is that we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change the past, or that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me, and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. Can I ask you a question? Down there, there's a little box. You're going to see these boxes all throughout this workbook. It's asking you to write down a sentence. I'm not going to say you have to, because I'm not your teacher. I also want you to know you will not ever show this to anyone that you don't want to show it to. This is totally private. It's yours. This isn't something you ever turn in to me unless you want me to see something that you write in there. But it's not mine. It's not any of your teachers. It's not your parents. It's yours. Okay? So you can write in it, and feel free to write in it whatever you want to write it, because nobody's going to see it but you. Okay? So then I'll just ask you right now to just write a quick sentence. Okay? 1 through, on a scale of 1 to 5. Do you agree with this statement? 1 means I totally disagree. This is not true at all. 5 means I totally 100% agree. Couldn't be more on the money. And then write a sentence about why. Why you think that. So go ahead and take like a minute and just go ahead and reflect on that for a second. Pencil doesn't work? Anybody else, your pencil not working? So what you give me is spend $5.99 for 30. Okay, I'm absolutely not going to force anybody to say anything, but does anybody have anything they want to say about that last little quote there? anything insightful? Go ahead.
I think that I agree with it. I think that anyone really has the ability to think before they act on something, so I really ability to act change.
People have the ability to think before they act. That's actually, that's truly what research shows is that's the mindset of a leader. Okay, now I'll tell you something about that. And you probably didn't see this, but on the first page of this section, there's a very famous, I don't even know what he is. He's a famous writer basically, business consultant for the most part. And he says this, he said, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's something to the effect of, between what you think, somebody get that quote for me. That's the quote right there. It says there's a small space between what happens to you and how you react to it. What happens in that space is your responsibility. He actually breaks it apart. Responsibility. Ability to respond. The research shows that people that are in higher management typically, so this is in business mostly, because I think businesses get studied more than anything, but people that are in higher management typically agree with that statement more. Okay? In fact, the term that we use, if you want to flip to page 9, the term that we use, or that psychologists use, there's a psychologist by the name of Julian Rotter, R-O-T-T-E-R. I think his name might be in the book. Yeah. Okay. Rotter studied this thing called Locus of control. Now, if you don't learn anything else and you never come back to another leadership thing ever in your life, and you finally can say, you know what, that guy's crazy, and I don't even want to listen to him anymore, and I don't really like his voice, and I want him out of my life, that's fine. But so if you decide you don't want to do this anymore, that's fine, but learn this right now. Leaders understand this concept of locus of control. Locus is just a Latin word for location. That's it. It just means location. Control obviously means control. Right? So the question is this. Where is the location of control in your life? Okay? If you believe that what's going on in your life is largely out of your control, we say you have an external locus of control. Okay? If you believe that you have a lot of control over the events of your life, then psychologists say you have an internal locus of control. Guess which one the research says leaders typically have? Internal or external? Internal, of course. They typically believe, now this is based on lots of psychological work, especially Rotter, so if you don't really, don't understand it or don't believe it or whatever, just go check on Julian Rotter, and he'll walk you through all the experiments that he's done. And like I said, it's mostly in business, but what he notices is that people that are in upper level management, they typically have a high internal locus of control. And then what he was studying too was like assembly line workers, and he says that assembly line workers typically have a external locus of control. They typically believe that everything in the world that has happened is completely out of their control. Right? It's like written in the stars or something. Okay? That's what the research says. Okay. So where are you at? That's what this page and actually the next couple of pages are really getting at is where are you at? Before you look or even do anything on there, just take a look at the screen for a second. Take this little quiz. It's real quick. I'm going to show you 5 statements. Okay? You get to rate it 1 through 7. Okay? 1 is I do not agree with this statement. 7 is I completely agree with this statement. Okay? I would write down your numbers just maybe in the margin in your book or something like that because you're going to add them up in the end. All right? So here we go. So where is your locus of control? Statement number 1. Agree or disagree, 1 through 7. Disagree is a 1, 7 is agree. I try to do things differently to improve my performance. Be honest. I can tell you that I aspire to this, but I don't know that I'm perfect at this. I'm not perfect at it. So be honest. Where are you at? Scale 1 to 7. 2. I go to new places and I really enjoy traveling. 3. When I go to a new restaurant, I order foods that I haven't tried. 4. I volunteer to be the first to learn and to do new tasks at work or at school. If you don't have a job, which some of you may or some of you don't. And finally, this is kind of a long one. When people suggest doing things differently, I support them, help bring about change. I don't make statements like, it wouldn't work, or we've never done it that way before, or we can't do it. Now again, I aspire to that, but I don't know that I'm perfect at it. So you got to kind of tease out. Is that something you aspire to? Or is it something you're really, truly very good at? Okay. So, go ahead and add up those numbers. Should have a number between 1 and 35, or between 5 and 35. And here's how it pans out. If you scored anywhere from a 31 to 35, you probably have a very high internal locus of control. Because that means you got 6s or 7s on all 5 of those items. Okay? If you are somewhere between a 26 and 30, you probably have an internal locus of control. It's probably not super strong, but it's very strong. If you are a 21 to 25, your tendency is probably to believe, that is more often than not, right? You tend to believe, yeah, I'm in control of my life, but there are times when you might not feel that way. That's basically what that would mean. So 20 would be the neutral point. You don't have an obvious tendency one way or the other. If you're 15 to 19, you probably have a tendency toward an external locus of control. Okay? Now, I got to be honest with you. I sincerely believe this is probably where I was about 5 years ago. And I might even be being generous to myself. I've really worked hard to develop. I'm probably somewhere between a 25 and 30 right now, maybe, on a good day. All right. Now, obviously, if you're lower than that, you can read the scale for yourself. What does research say about that? People who lead organizations successfully tend towards strong internal locus of control. Someone can have a strong internal locus of control in one area of their life and not in another area. Maybe you feel very confident in the area of money, like you're really good financially, but you're just not that good with people or whatever, right? This is my favorite. This is what the research says. People can change their locus of control. So if you feel like there's something you need to improve on in terms of your locus of control, you can do it. Now, do people want to? Sometimes it's very uncomfortable for people, but you have to decide whether or not you're willing to leave that comfort zone. If you are, you'll probably become a more successful leader. If you're not, you'll probably be stuck where you are today, which is okay. Effective leaders develop their own locus of control, and this is my favorite, as well as help others to do the same. So if you're sitting there right now, like I'm sure some of you are, going, hey, I'm a 33. I'm awesome. You are awesome. That's amazing. But that's not the end of the story. Because the end of the story is you're going to have to help other people develop their That should scare you a little bit. First thing to develop an internal locus of control, either yours or someone else's, is just become aware of your own beliefs about stuff. For example, I mentioned a little bit ago, people have differing or different loci, that would be plural for locus, loci of control based on their different upbringings and stuff like that. For example, I have always felt like I have no problem learning stuff. When it comes to mental development, I have a very strong internal locus of control. I can read, I can write, I can listen, I can pay attention, I learn stuff easy. Okay? Now when it comes to, I mentioned before, money. I'm not that good with money. I'm not a very disciplined spender, or saver, or spender. I mean, I do what I have to, right, because I have a family. But I'm not great with money. I don't like invest a whole lot. I invest like the minimum amount. And I just feel like it is beyond my control. Like, I don't even understand money. First of all, I don't even really know what money is, to be honest. Like, where it actually comes from, I have no idea. I know there are people who know, but I don't know. I feel like money is like out of my control. Like, I'm never going to be rich. Now, I don't really care at this point in my life, but that's just how I feel. You see how I have two different loci of control? So on the picture that you have, there's two circles. Oops, did I lose that picture? Where did that picture go? No, it's gone. It was? I think you're making that up. Oh! Okay. So, here's a little thing. Let's just do this exercise. I'm going to name something, and you write down whether you think it's within your control or not in your control. Okay? And so if you think it's within your control, write it in the inner circle. If you think it's not in your control, write it in the outer circle. Okay? Some of them will be silly. Okay? All right. We'll start with kind of a silly and obvious one. Delta Airlines flight schedule. Do you have any control over that? Delta Airlines flight schedule. Is that within your control or is that not within your control? If you think that's within your control, then write it in here. Okay? Okay. Your grades. Now, some people say, well, I kind of do, kind of don't. Well, go ahead and write it on the line. Things that you feel like you are in control of, but just barely, put it out here on the edges. Things that you are dead certain that you have control of, put it smack dab in the middle. Okay? Okay? Your weight. How much you weigh. Your height. Your clothes. How much money you have. Yes.
One based on being individual or overall, like as a family or.
Yeah, I was thinking more like you individually.
Okay.
It's a good question. I was thinking like just how much money you have. You got a bank account? How much you got in your wallet? You got investments? How much money you have? Okay. The strength between you and your best friend. So you could just write strength of relationship. Do you have control over that, or is that not in your control? Okay, let's stop for a minute. Some of those are fairly obvious, right? Some of them maybe a little less so. But let me ask you this. Is there anybody here who's sitting here right now and they wrote something, you don't have to say what it is, but you wrote something that is outside the inner circle, but you think that everybody else in here probably wrote something that's inside the inner circle. Do you know what I'm saying? Like for me, I would say this. Like when I was in high school, I really had a belief that too many other things affected my grades. See what I'm saying? So I would have probably written that in the outer circle, or at least on the edges of the circle. Now I know that's stupid, but that's just how it was when I was a kid. Anybody know what I'm saying here? Anybody have something like that? Like they think, yeah, this is... It's interesting to me that we are sitting here and we basically, at least in our minds, we're all agreeing on stuff. What does that tell me? Either you all think you're right, that's what I think it is probably, is that everybody just thinks, yeah, hey, everybody's going to agree with this, right? Or the other possibility is we don't trust each other yet, and we're just not willing to go out on a limb yet, which is okay. What I'm going to ask you to do right now is to just kind of turn in your groups and just talk about it for a second and just let each other know where did you place stuff. Go ahead. So on the page that faces that one, you see a little chart, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this chart, but this is one of my favorite charts of all charts. If there's such a thing as a favorite chart, this is my favorite chart. This chart actually comes from the same guy who had that saying about responsibility, Stephen Covey. He's kind of just a genius, so I quote him a lot and I put some of his stuff in here. But one of the problems that sometimes people have is they say, well, I really don't, I want to change certain things about how I feel. Like we were talking about, me and Trace over here, we were talking about like friends and how, like if someone's going to make me mad, that's not my fault, that's their fault. And first of all, what do you think about that? If somebody makes me mad, that's their fault. That's not my fault. I can't control whether or not I get mad because they do something stupid or mean or disrespectful. Right? What do you think about that? Go ahead.
But isn't it in your control
want to speak for Trace, but I would think that he would say, well, yeah, I can't help being frustrated. I think you can, maybe what you're saying is, you can't help feeling frustrated, but you can help how you act. And here's what the research actually says about that, is how you act can dictate how you feel. And if you think about that, there's some truth to that. Maybe you've had some experience with that. Like, I know this is dumb, and first time I heard this, I thought it was really dumb. But if I just, Avery, I mean, can you just like be a volunteer for me for a second? So, I'm just going to ask you to, like, how do you feel right now? Pretty relaxed? How are you feeling? Just normal? Probably a little embarrassed right now. Okay. If I just said, just like right now, just as hard as you can, just laugh. Can you do that for me?
Probably not, no.
You won't really? Just try. Just go, ha ha! Just go ahead. She's already doing it. She can't even stop right now. Just give us everything you got. Just give me a ha ha ha. There we go. How do you feel right now? Pretty cool, right? I mean, it's a lot different. So I guess the point is that sometimes your actions can change how you actually feel. Sorry, that's kind of thing. Those are both great points. What Covey says is this. Oftentimes what you can do is you can pay attention to your words. If you don't know what else to do to help get control of your own self in a situation, just pay attention to your words. And so if you look in that chart right there on the left-hand column, there are, 8 or 10 words that people commonly, if you have an external locus of control, you're going to use that left-hand column a lot. You see what I mean? There's phrases in there like, well, there's nothing I can do. Or, that's just the way I am. I can't change. It's just who I am. Or, oh, he makes me so mad. Or, they're never going to allow that. Or, I have to do this. I have to. Think about that phrase. I have a friend who says, you don't have to do anything to die someday. Which, think about it, it's kind of true. Or, I can't. Or, I must. Or, if only. So let me throw this at you. In fact, let's take this time right now. Let's take about a minute or two. And can you just talk with each other and think of an alternative phrase instead of those phrases? Does that make sense? Okay, give it a shot. It's not easy. Okay, anybody come up with anything good for any of them? Anybody, anything? Let's just take it from the top down. There's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about that. How many have ever said that? Anybody ever said that? Nothing I can do about that. I do, and I say that all the time. I shouldn't, but I do. What could you say? And not lie to yourself. Because that's the key to this. Because if you're going to lie to yourself, then you probably shouldn't do it. Because lying to yourself isn't, psychologists will tell you that's not good. Go ahead.
Waking up tonight, I'll think of something to do.
Yeah. Let's just take a look at the alternatives. What are the alternatives? Good. And maybe that's it. You say, well, that doesn't solve anything. Well, it's better than saying, saying there's nothing you can do, because if there's nothing you can do, what are you going to do? Nothing. Right? If there's nothing you can do, you're going to do nothing. But if you're going to say, let's look at the alternatives. Let's look at what we can do. At least you're going to do something. That's more proactive than doing nothing. That's how a leader acts. It's just the way I am. It's a tough one. A lot of people think you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Turns out that's not true. Read a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It'll blow your mind. It's just the way I am. Can you think of an alternative phrase there? I mean, I can't. Go ahead.
I was thinking maybe if you said, I will do the best I can in the current situation to the best of my ability or something.
That's probably the phrase I would use. I'm going to give it my best. I don't know if that's good enough right now, but I'm going to at least give it my best. Yep. Good.
Maybe like, it's just my tendencies, because then you're saying you can kind of get away with it.
That's brilliant. That's really sharp. It's just my tendency. I don't have to act that way, but that's what I tend to do in this situation. That's pretty sharp. That's my tendency. I like that. Because at least there's a little wiggle room to get out of there, isn't there? That's nice. How about just, they'll never allow that. Anybody ever think of something like, and then you just think, oh, our activities director will never allow that. You ever ask them, like, or your parents? Oh, they're not going to go for it. What are you going to say? What would be an alternative? Yeah, how do we know unless we ask? There you go. Or, I bet you I can create an effective presentation and maybe convince them. Right? All right, let's turn the page. We have not a lot of time left. We still got a ways to go yet. Okay. So, there's this whole, this is page 11 now. You want to know the essence, listen. Anybody can get somebody to do something that they want them to do. Right? I mean, there's all kinds of methods. You can yell at them, hey, I want you to knock it off. And normally they'll knock it off. Right? You can make short-term behavior changes. What I just did is not very good. I mean, but it works in the short term, which is why people do it, by the way. So I didn't get the screen answer. But if you want long-term results, if you want people behaving and acting correctly by themselves, without you having to direct every little behavior, like, hey, sit up straight. You don't want to do that all the time, right? You don't have to. Because there's a good little parable about that. And it's on page 11, I think. And it goes like this. It says, yeah, it's page 11. There's an old parable about a man who was walking next to a river and saw another man drowning. He quickly jumped in to save him and pulled him to safety. And the hero asked the drowning victim, what happened? How did you fall in? But before the exhausted victim could answer, the hero saw another man struggling for his life. Again, he jumped in and rescued the helpless man. This happened over and over until the hero finally stopped and insisted, what's going on? One of the drowning victims had enough strength to say, there's an evil troll upstream throwing people into the raging river. So the hero, that's you, the hero decides to go upstream and stop the evil troll so that no more people could be thrown into the river. What does this have to do with leadership? Go ahead and take a second and write. What does this have to do with leadership? Okay. So page 12 then. Page 12 is like what that story has to do with leadership. This is like the model. Okay? This is called the Pentagon of Behavior. And I have to say that for the most part, I developed this. This is my little thing. Okay? I call it the Pentagon of Behavior. And basically what it is it's the idea that you can go upstream. You know, this metaphorically I'm speaking. You can go upstream and you can change your behaviors. But what a lot of people do, and this is the biggest mistake people make, they try to change behaviors strictly through discipline. Okay? So discipline can be self-discipline or other discipline. Anyone know where the word discipline comes from? Yeah, like a disciple, right, is a student, right? So a disciple is a student. So if you discipline, you are teaching, right? So you can self-discipline. That's what self-discipline is you're teaching yourself. Or you can discipline others. Sit up straight. Right? That's disciplining other people. She's like, I'm sitting pretty straight. So the question is this, is if you want to have different results, can you just discipline your way into that? And here's what the research says. Not usually. Not for a sustained amount of time. How many of you know someone that's gone on a diet and lost a bunch of weight and then gained it all back? Anybody know anybody like that? Yeah. I know people that have had their stomachs stable, lost a bunch of weight, and then gained it all back. Why do you think that happens? That happens all the time, by the way. It's super common. Weight Watchers makes billions of dollars on this concept. Well, hundreds of millions.
Because when people set a goal, they reach it and then don't continue to follow through on the habits that they made.
Yeah, so like they set a goal, they reach the goal, and they're like, hey, I've made it. So now they can go back to their old habits, right? Because they made it. They already did what they set out to do. All they did was change what? I'll give you a hint. Go backwards. What leads to results? That starts with an A. Actions. That's all they did. All they did was change their actions. They changed their actions. They ate less. They probably worked out a little bit. How do you think they felt about eating less? Probably not that good, right? Like, I'll do it, but only because I have to. Right? So in other words, I just kind of gave away the answer. But what leads to actions? What do you think? You're right. Feelings lead to action. Think about it for a second. Anybody ever, I know maybe nobody in this room ever, but have you ever heard of somebody putting off homework? I know nobody in this room would ever do that, but I'm asking, have you ever heard of such a thing? You've never even heard of it? Okay, well let me just tell you. It happens sometimes. I've been a school teacher for 17 years now, and in my career, I've heard of it happening a time or two. Okay? But imagine this for a second. Okay? You're putting off your homework. You're like, okay, I don't really want to do my homework right now. I don't really have to. I can do it later or whatever. Okay? What feeling does that generate? You don't have to do it. What feeling does that generate? Yeah, like nothing, like apathy, like I don't even care, I don't have to do it right now, right? That's why you put it off. But at some point, the table turns, doesn't it? At some point, it gets to be 11:30, and it's due tomorrow. At some point, that happens. A fact changes. How does that change your feeling? If you care about your homework. Well, how do you feel now? Stress. So stress is not necessarily a bad thing. Stress can be a good thing because it creates action. If it's managed correctly, stress is a good thing. creates action. So this feeling creates that action. Now, keep this in mind. I'm not necessarily just talking to you, but to the people you lead. Does this make sense? Okay, now, so really, what was it that created the stress feeling? It was a different, that's right, it was a different thought. Because before your thought was, oh, I got plenty of time. Well, now your thought is, I got to be done tomorrow. And it's getting late. Okay. Now, this last one nobody ever gets. So I'll just challenge you right now. What creates your thoughts? No, nobody's going to get it, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, go ahead. What do you think? Issues, good guess. Not right. Inspiration, good guess. Not right. Nobody ever gets it. I got to change this. This is not overly obvious. Come on, somebody.
Interests.
Interest, not bad. Wrong, but not bad. Deals, you did kind of wonder what it was. All right, I'll just give it to you. Here's what they said. What? You're really close. It's your identity. Listen, your self-identity creates your thoughts. Your self-identity creates your thoughts. What creates your self-identity? Yeah, it's the results that you've gotten in your life. Listen, if you're a little kid, this happened to me when I was a little kid. I was a little kid, I missed like the first 4 days of kindergarten because I had the chicken pox. And I showed up on the 4th day of kindergarten, and the teacher said, okay, now today we're going to paint a tree. Well, little did I know, they've already been painting trees all week long. I had never painted a tree before. So I drew, a little brown stick and then a green circle, and it looked like a lollipop, but I thought it was a great looking tree. And then the teacher came over to me and kind of said, oh, that's great. And then went on, to the next one and said, oh, this is beautiful. And so I'm sitting back here looking at my tree thinking, I'm a terrible painter. Because she barely even looked at my painting, and she's really painting. You guys kind of look like sad to me right now. I'm adjusting. I'm okay now. But I'm just saying, back in the day, it was kind of painful to me because I thought, I must not be a good painter. And do you know how long that thought stuck with me? So I'm 40 now. I'm not a good painter. But not because I couldn't be if I really wanted to work at it, but my self-identity for all those years was, I'm not a good painter. So I never painted. So I never felt like painting. And if I never felt like painting, I never painted. And if I never painted, I never got any practice, did I? And then I tried painting something, 10 years ago, and guess how it was? Terrible. Why? Because I don't have any practice doing it. So what created my identity about me being a painter? Well, the results. I could prove it to myself, plus other influences. That's just my self-identity. Let me give you a little leadership notion. And this is a really important thing. It's not in the book. Actually, it's probably somewhere later in the book. It comes from a sports psychologist by the name of Gary Mack. This is what Gary Mack says. He wrote a great book, by the way. It's called Mind Gym. If you're an athlete and you haven't read that book, you need to read that book. It's a really good book. It's all about how elite athletes, train their mind. It's called Mind Gym, as in like a gymnasium for your mind. Gary Mack is his name. He says this: people don't consistently outperform their self-image. You may at times operate at the edge of your self-image, but you're not going to outperform your self-image consistently. Any golfers in here? You golf? You hit a par every time? No? Would you like to? Yeah. Of course. You'd probably beat me by a few strokes, I would guess. I'm not a very good golfer. But there are times when I have golfed par. Right? There are times when I'll hit a 4 on a par 4 or a 5 on a par 5. It doesn't happen very often. You know why? Because I don't see myself as a par golfer. And so I don't do the things that a par golfer would do if they were trying to be a good golfer. If I saw myself as a good golfer, I'd constantly be golfing because that's what good golfers do, right? But I don't see myself that way, so I don't golf that way. And as a result, I'm not that good at it. I mean, I'm okay, but I'm not great. I'm just like probably most anybody else would pick up and go. Can you see a connection? Can you see a leadership connection here? On occasion, we have to interrupt people's thoughts, don't we? Because people sometimes live with this self-identity, and it's just wrong. They're wrong. They say, I'm no good at that. But they're wrong. But if you just walk up to somebody and say, I'm no good at, go ahead, what are you no good at? Be honest. There you go. And you say, you're no good at color. And I say, but yes, you are. Well, the argument's kind of over. I mean, there's really not that much to talk about, is it? I mean, did that really make you feel now like you're a good colorer? Believe in yourself. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's not what I mean, though. But you get my point, though? Is that just saying to I'm just going to use, I don't use this word a lot, but I'm going to use the word now. I'm going to say follower, right? Just saying to a follower, oh yeah, you really could do that better. That's not necessarily going to change what they are going to do or what they're going to think. Or how have you ever had this happen? You're in a game, some kind of game, and you're down by a lot. Let's say you're down by, say it's a basketball game, and you're down by 30 with a minute to go. And some fool over on the bench goes, come on, we can still do this. And you're like, no. I mean, have you ever had that happen? Or something similar to that happen? Right? We've all kind of had that happen. And what are they doing? They're just trying to be positive, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But is it really changing what you think? Is it changing how you feel? Is it changing how you act? No. Because you didn't really create any thought that would change your feeling. Now, what if you're down by 30 and there's a minute left in the game, and instead of saying, oh, come on, we can still do this, you say something like this. Hey, no matter what happens for this last minute, let's just give our very best effort. I mean, we know that the scoreboard's not going to turn out our way, but let's just give our very best effort. You think that might change your feeling? Maybe. It's probably better than, come on guys, we can still do this. You know what I mean? So the job of a leader is to find the thoughts and communicate the thoughts that affect people at a level of feeling. Because it's only when you feel differently that you will act differently. And it's only when you act differently that you're going to get better results. Does this make sense? Okay. We're basically out of time, aren't we? Yes. Okay. Turn the page, please. Take a look at that little quote. I could have summed everything up. I could have summed everything up that I've just said in the last 10 minutes in that right there. Guard your thoughts. What is it? Guard your thoughts. They become your words. Guard your words. They become your actions. Guard your actions. They become your habits. Guard your habits. They really do become your destiny. It's what you do continually, habitually, right? That eventually becomes who you are. And it's what all members of your team do habitually that creates the destiny for your team. I'm not saying all of you in here are going to be the captain of a state championship team. You might be. I don't know.